Hello and thank you for joining us. This is Brian, your host of the Parrish the Thought Show. The opinions of said host and our guests have not been sanitized or scientifically tested, so please consume at your own risk. Ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, welcome back to the program. My guest for a second time today is Officer Dexter Pitts of the Louisville Metro Police Department. We talk about how each one of us can make this great country even greater by simply changing a few behaviors. So strap in and enjoy this episode.
Record on this. What's up, everybody? This is your boy Dex with the I Am Pitts podcast. And I have with me today a fellow podcaster and someone I would like to consider a good friend now. We have with us Mr. Brian Parrish of the Parrish the Thought podcast. What's going on, my man?
Man, it is so good to talk to you once again. It is fun. I've enjoyed our short-lived so far relationship. It's been fun. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're gonna call it a bromance at this point.
You know what? I'm all good with those because they're real.
It's definitely real. I told my wife, I don't know what it is, but I have a lot of Mormon friends at this point in my life, and I absolutely love it. They make me better.
Well, we're not all crazy. I mean, just some of us.
Oh man, yes.
Anyway,
I need to get out there to Utah is what I need to do. So I got you out there now and Tina.
And Tina, yeah, it's a fun place. It's really pretty here. There's a lot to do environment wise. The mountains are incredible. It's desert, it's hot, it's cold, it snows. You get a little everything. It's cool.
Yeah, hopefully that's like I said, that's on the bucket list. So hopefully maybe next year after the recession kicks off and gas prices come down, hopefully maybe I can make it out that way.
Yeah, I know. Without mortgaging your home.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Pocket screaming a little bit these days, brother, but that's why I'm glad that's why I like being a cop right now. Job security. That's the more crime keeps going up, I don't have to worry.
There's some truth to that statement. And you love what you do, so that's helpful too.
I really do, man. I really do. Speaking of loving what you do, so one thing I know with you is you love being a podcaster, but everyone seems to have a podcast nowadays, but everyone's journey to podcasting is different. And so I kind of want to go back with you and try to get the audience to get to know who you are and how you became you. So where are you from originally?
I am from I call it a village in Northern California of about 100 people that no one's heard of.
A village of 100 people?
Yeah, it's a tiny little town up in the mountains near Tahoe. Really pretty place, but very, very isolated. And my grandfather, like back in the mid 30s, he either owned or managed the Palm Springs airport and did a little summer mountain road trip to this little community called Old Station and loved it. And he moved there. So my dad has been there since he was 5 years old. He is now 82 and will probably die there. But it's a little slice of heaven, but really isolated, and I wouldn't want to live there again, but it's fun to visit.
And where's this? Palm Springs, California? Palm
Springs is where my grandfather lived at the time. That's Southern California, near like an hour east of LA.
Gotcha.
But then he was doing a little summer road trip up in Northern California, complete opposite end of the state, and found this little piece of heaven, I guess is what you call it.
Man, I can imagine.
So I left it when I was 18.
Really? What made you leave?
School. And my dad said, you need to get out of here because it's a logging community, or it was a logging community when that existed. And he said, you're going to go to college because if you stay here, you'll never leave. And I probably would have ended up driving a logging truck and never left. Not that staying is horrible, but I never would have branched out and had the experiences I had. So I went to school. I came to Utah State for college right after high school. And then from there moved over to Colorado State and finished school there, and then ended up going to Palm Springs where I met my wife. And then we came back here 15 years ago because we wanted seasons.
You definitely got them out there.
And Palm Springs is hot and less hot. Those are the two seasons.
Man, so what was it like growing up in a logging community? I can only imagine what that must have been like growing up. I'm sure you learned a lot of things. What were some of the like important lessons you learned growing up in such a small community, especially from your father, who seems like he was a very hardworking man, being a logger?
Yeah, he was. Him and his brother they logged together. My dad's done a little bit of everything, but most of my friends' parents or, their dads worked at the mills or drove logging truck. And there's a lot of farming in the area as well. Small community, everybody. My school was about 40 miles away in another small town, but a little bit bigger.
40 miles?
I was on the bus 40 miles. So I was on the school bus an hour and a half one way to school every day. So 3 hours on the bus. But it was all you knew. There was probably about 20 kids in my little town, and you learned how to entertain yourself, and you worked and you had chores, but the woods and your bikes that was your refuge, and that's what you did. I look back and my kids are like, how could you live there? I'm like, well, you had nothing to compare to. But just the tight knit community, everybody knows everybody is a good thing. Can be a bad thing, but it's a good thing. I still have, I can go back and visit people that are still there that I know, and I know their kids or their grandkids or their grandparents. And I mean, 3 or 4 generations went to my same high school.
Am I the first black person you met, Brian?
No. But it was in terms of like demographics.
Yeah.
It was Shasta County. I think there was 1 black kid in my school, and I didn't think anything of it. Just, okay. It was never like something I noticed or didn't notice. He was just a good dude, and that was it. Probably one of the whitest places on the planet. And now I live in one of the whitest places on the planet, not really by conscious design, but just ended up being here. So, but yeah.
Man, that's awesome, man.
But it's been fun. It's cool.
That is awesome. So what did you study in college?
I started in landscape architecture and then changed over to graphic design. And then when I graduated, I did graphic design for 20 plus years until about 5-6 years ago, and got burnt out with that world, and then changed over to real estate about 5 years ago.
Yeah. How's that switch been for you?
Best thing I ever did for my life. I've had the best 5 years of my life, because I never thought I could do sales, and because people said, you're really good with people, you're really interested in people, you should do sales. And I was like, no way in hell am I going to do that, because we've all had that experience with that sales guy who's trying to pitch you and doesn't really care about you, just wants to sell. I'm like, I don't want any part of that world if that's what I got to be. But I quickly realized that you don't have to be that way. You can just be good, decent, kind, help people. And so the freedom it's allowed me has been amazing. Freedom of thought. I mean, just my mental game is so much different now, because I believe I can do more and be more, and never thought I could before, because I was taught to survive and just exist by my dad, who is a hard worker, but that isn't enough. So I switched all that up, and it's been the best 5 years of my life. And I started this freaking podcasting world, which I love. And that may be your next question. How did I get into this?
That's exactly where I was going. Yeah, man. Like, because everybody's got a different journey into podcasting. And I tell everybody and their mama got a podcast. But just because somebody has a podcast does not mean it is good. And I think a lot of people end up getting into podcasting and realizing, whoa, this is not easy. This is actually a job, and you got to prep, and you got to work, and can reach out to people and find time. So it's got to be something you really enjoy doing, and I've listened to your podcast in multiple episodes, and I'm like, nah, I like this guy. I like his perspective. So what got you started and interested in it?
Well, I've always just been genuinely interested in people's stories and hearing about them. When I ask someone how they're doing, I want to know. Not that, other people aren't, but that's been my thing. And it's always been easy to get to know people. And then about 5 years ago, a friend of mine said, you should do a podcast. You've got a good perspective on things. And I'd never even thought about it. And that's when I started hearing about podcasting and some of the software. And the software that I use is a free software called Anchor. And I just been hearing some advertisements about it. I'm like, all right, I'll try it. And one of the other inspirations for it was there was a TV show on BYU TV, Story Trek, and this guy would randomly go to towns and literally randomly knock on someone's door with his camera and say, "Hey, what's your story?" And of course, everyone would, be resistant and say, "Well, who am I? Nobody wants to hear my story. I've got nothing." People think they have nothing, and it's just one of the biggest lies ever. And so when they were done interviewing that person, they'd drop a map of the town, or they put a map of the town on the ground, drop a Sharpie marker on it, and wherever it landed, that's where they'd go next and knock on someone's door. Or first person that walked up with them, they'd ask them, "What's your story?" And it's amazing. I've learned that, if you've breathed the breath of life, you've got a story to tell. And that's what this host of the show, that was his premise. And just the miracle of the randomness of it was so impressive. So that's how I work my show. I don't go to random people. I look at, I'm like, well, that's an interesting story. The way I found you was interesting because I've interviewed other police officers and I wanted another perspective, and just your background and the things you've learned. And one of my neighbors is a 911 operator. I'm like, well, that'll be an interesting story. Some people have written some books, some authors, just anybody that I think is interesting. So I'll basically talk about anything but poetry because I hate poetry.
You and I, we both have discovered our hatred of poetry through, he and I have been kind of tag teaming on the 1619 Project book. One thing I've been trying to do is, a lot of people, we get stuck in these echo chambers and we like reading material that reaffirms our beliefs and biases. And so me and Brian, we decided, hey man, we're going to check out the 1619 Project together. And as we're sitting here listening to it, I'm like, this is kind of heavy on poetry, man. He was like, yes, it's horrible. I was like, same. It's like, I knew I liked you.
It's almost like, and I, and I'm sure I might be turned. I'd be willing to let someone try to teach me how to enjoy it. But it seems like they're using a lot of poetry for filler in the book.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I have a hard time relating to it. Maybe that's why I have a hard time reading scripture as well, because it's like poetry. It's like, did Shakespeare write the Bible? I think he may have.
And see, I'm the same way, man. That's why I tell people I'm a Christian, but not a very good one. Like, are you reading your Bible, young man? Like, not as much as I should. But in my defense, like I say, I don't really read anything else either. So yeah. I'm not a big book guy.
Yeah, and I can read it, but I understand it. So
yeah,
it's probably by design that you have to really put effort into it and pray and study and all that. But anyway, so that's why I do my show, and it's just surpassed 100 episodes a few months back, and it's just a little hobby I do. If somehow I could replace my real estate income with podcasting, I would do that, because I love talking to people. I hate the editing part of it. I just like to talk to people, and I wish I had a team that would take it and chop it up and send it out, but I got to do that too, because that's the bootstrapping world.
Yes, it is.
But I love it. I love talking to people. There's so many stories, and I think we are forgetting how to talk to each other, truly talk to each other, and try to understand each other. And especially every other day, there's another divisive ruling or politics or whatever. We're so divided. It's beyond belief, really, how volatile we are towards each other. And the social media allows you to be that keyboard warrior and have that keyboard courage and just hammer people with no accountability. And it just continues the problem, in my opinion.
It really does. And people find these online communities and they're just echo chambers. And like I said, it just reaffirms their beliefs, just like with the Roe v. Wade decisions that just came out the other day. I almost had to just put my phone down and step away because it's so exhausting. And the thing is, you have people on both sides of the issue where it's like you have one side, they're just gloating and happy. And I understand, hey, I'm all for, I choose life. I'm very, I'm pro-life. But at the same time, you can't just disregard the other side's argument because they have some valid arguments and valid concerns. But we don't have reasonableness within the country no more. We only think from the extremes and from the fringes now. We have people on the left that are saying, you love, what is it? You don't care about women, you hate women. And I'm like, that's not true. Then you have people on the right saying, you all just want to murder babies. And I'm like, that's not a fair statement either, It's so hard to try to find people that are willing to talk and have a conversation like you and I. We are two totally different people from two totally different walks of life. But the fact is that we are able to meet and have conversations and be reasonable and sensible and listen. Man, my dad, how do you think we as a country and just as people can start moving towards that, where we have people like you and I that can come together and have a talk and have a conversation without wanting to kill each other and just splintering off into these groups?
We have to try, and we don't try. For example, I have a family that grew up in the Bay Area. The Bay Area is extremely liberal, generally speaking, and I'm trying to have her on, especially about the Supreme Court ruling, because I want to hear why she believes what she believes. And I think, and there, again, this is all just theories of mine, but I think there's this fear that if I talk to the other side, then I'm going to be co-opted by that side, or almost like you're supporting the other side just by talking to them. And I just don't think that's true. You can ask, and I posted this the other day, in light of the ruling, let us at least be willing to talk to people that have differing opinions and at least find out why they have those opinions, because everyone has their experience that's driven them to the positions they hold, but we don't take the time to find out why. And sometimes I know even asking the question, you're going to get slammed for, being a hater just for posing a question. But I think that's the easiest step towards healing that we can all do. And if we're willing, if both people are willing to learn from each other and not try to win, because my dad said the other day, he was talking with some liberals, because he's about as conservative as you can get. He says, yeah, I was talking to these liberals and couldn't really think of what to say to win or to beat them. And then afterwards, when the conversation was over, I thought of all these things I could have said to beat them. I'm like, I don't think that's what it's about. I don't want to beat somebody, because what have I solved? I've solved nothing. And they go away not liking me anymore. And because they feel like they're being sold. Nobody wants to be sold.
Especially in this world, man, where everything's being sold to us, man. It's so hard to be an individual now, because everybody feels like they have to be part of a group. Everybody has to belong to this and that. And like when people ask me, like, well, are you black? I'm like, yes, I'm black, but at the end of the day, I'm just Dexter, man. My identity, we can't have our identities wrapped up in these, in these issues and debates that are separating us, because if that issue goes away, then what are you left with, And I think a lot of people are afraid to be their own person because they don't know who they are as a person. And also, one thing I'm realizing with a lot of these debates right now, especially on social media, is I don't think people understand why they're mad themselves, even though they're in support of something, or they're against something, because it's like people don't have original thoughts now. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the same things posted online, like memes and posts people are sharing, because it's expressing, I guess, what they're thinking. They just don't know how to put it in their own words. So they keep sharing other people's thoughts. And I'm like, well, you can share that, but that's not your own thought. What is your own personal feelings and thoughts? And I think we've gotten away from that, to where people just share memes because they can't think for themselves.
Yeah. And I see that, and I've done it before, back
We
when
all
I
have.
wanted to win. And maybe sometimes the meme captures exactly what you feel. I think we're also, if you're willing to share something like that, you should be willing to back it up, or at least back up why. And like, okay, mentioning my cousin again, the one from Berkeley, when Barack Obama won, I think that's when I really changed my thinking about conversation. She was so excited, and we were having this conversation on Facebook, and she caught herself and she says, oh, I'm so sorry for being so excited. I know you probably don't like Obama. And at the time I didn't really like his policies and what he stood for. But I told her, I said, you should be able to shout from the rooftops your love for this man and why you love him, and be able to back it up, and people should be okay with that. I don't want to fight with you or tell you you're wrong because you love it. Tell me why. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. We're so, again, sticking divided that it's just a strange, situation that we're in, and it's just getting worse, I think. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's just, I don't follow media much. Maybe it's getting better, but if you just sample in the media, it's poison. In fact, one of my daughters was talking to my wife this morning about how frustrated and scared she is right now because she's watching all these stories. And I said, well, hey, where are you getting all this? And she's like, TikTok. I'm like, okay, well, is it possible that might not be the best resource for your news, or at least balance it? But if it's all that, it's just people's opinion, which is that's what I love about social media. Everyone has an opinion, everyone can share it, but the sad part about it is everyone can share it.
You know, it's an oversaturated market. I mean, there's so many opinions out there. And I'll kind of go back to what we were talking about, reading the Bible. It's the same with social media. You have to be careful where you're getting your information from, and you have to be careful who is interpreting stuff for you, because just like social media is not necessarily a bad thing, but whoever uses it can uses it for evil and can use it for negative things, just like the Bible. I mean, Jim Jones in the Jonestown Cult, he was able to take something. He was able to take people that were lost in search of something and use the word of God and perverted it and use it to his own benefit and brainwashed all these people. I mean, how many hundreds or thousands of people to leaving that behind their possessions and moving to South America with him. And he convinced men to give up their wives for him. And that's just why I tell people, man, we have to get back to a place where we're able to think for ourselves on some sort of level.
Yeah, the philosophies of man mingled with scripture. Here's an example. We were traveling a couple weeks ago, and we were in Manchester, England, and that's the home of my son's favorite soccer team, aka football. We can't call
real
it soccer.
Football.
It's football. Real football. So we were touring the stadium, and that's like his mecca. And part of the tour was we got to take a picture in the press box. So I took this picture of me shaking his hand like he was a new player. So I posted, hey, my son just got signed to the Manchester United Football Club, youngest player ever. Just put it out there as a joke. And it grew legs. And so many people, my family included, they bought it hook, line, and sinker. And my brother even called my dad and gave him this big long spiel about how my son just got hired, onto the Manchester United Soccer Club at 16 years old. And I was just, I'm like, oh, we'll see how far this goes. And it's still going.
Oh, wow.
Some people get it, but others are like, wow, that is so, when's he going to move there? I'm like, it's a sham. But thank you for playing along.
Oh man, yeah, that's crazy. It takes nothing to put something on a social media for it to go legs, brother. It's just everything. That's why I tell people I don't believe anything I see on social media. I question everything now. And not just because I'm a cop and because I'm kind of cynical, just because people lie, people have agendas. And that's why I find it so hard for myself to really get on board with some of the bigger social media people on platforms and influencers, because I know with social media, it's all about generating clicks and likes. And in order to do that, you got to stir up controversy. Like one of the biggest things we had the other day was Juneteenth was just celebrated, and I know that Juneteenth was taken by the Democrats and Joe Biden, and they made it a federal holiday. And I know they made it political, but we have people that are Black and people that are extremely conservative, people that are Republicans that refuse to acknowledge Juneteenth and celebrate it because Joe Biden made it into a federal holiday and used it for politics. Wow. And I understand, but I was saying on my last podcast, sometimes we have to take away the politics and things and just strip things down to its core and look at it for what it is. It's like, hey, this is a good thing. But of course, politics muddy the water and people's opinions, people stirring up controversy because they want some clicks. And, some of the comments I've seen are, it's just like absolutely disgusting. And people trying to cancel companies because they're acknowledging Juneteenth.
Yeah. It's there's been, studies, but people will take a famous quote they won't say who it's from. It'll be maybe by somebody from the right, and they'll go on the street and talk to a bunch of more liberal leaning people like on a college campus and say, hey, this, what do you think of this statement? And they're like, oh, we love that statement. And then the host will reveal where it came from. And then the people almost feel like, oh, I don't know if I like that statement anymore. I'm like, well, why don't you give credit where credit is due, regardless of who said it? But because someone from the other side, which is what we do, we other people, the sidesing and othering, if they said it, like, if Biden comes out and says something good and it has merit and value, then great. I don't care that it's him that said it. But it's the sidesing and the others, the teams and winning, and it's crazy. It's crazy what the mess we're in right now. But I think it's fixable. I think it's fixable if we just slow down. Again, the sources I call it the trough, that whatever trough you feed from, you know that it might not be 100% accurate. I know you might believe it because it's confirmation bias and it fits your agenda, but it may be, we all might be being lied to. And I know that may be oversimplifying things, but there's a possibility because media is a business, generally speaking. And like you said, clicks and getting, riling up your base and getting them fired up. Because I used to be very conservative, but I think I'm more in the middle now. And I hear all the time the name calling and the libs, the Dems, the right-wing Republicans, all is just the name calling. As soon as you name call, I think you lose the argument to some extent.
You've lost. Yeah, you are at your intellectual capacity once you have to start name calling, because you literally have nothing else to go on but that.
Yeah.
So it's an automatic.
But it shuts. Yeah, and it shuts down the argument. Oh, you're a racist. All right. Well, okay, I guess I'm done. You're right. But where can we go from there? Because if I disagree with, and I was called racist for not agreeing with some of Obama's policies, but it was more the liberal policy I didn't like. But you're a racist because that's easier. It's intellectually dishonest, like you say.
Yeah, and it just breaks my heart to see it. And so for me, it's one of those things where it's like, as a Black person, and I hate saying that because it's like, well, I am Black, but I said that's not my entire identity. And everybody wants to put these labels on us and put us into these boxes. So let me ask you, growing up with you, did y'all talk politics in your house at all, in your small community? And what was the outlook on like the rest of the world and the country from such a small community? And did that shape your perspective?
Well, it was, again, very, very conservative, maybe even more conservative than Utah to a fault, really. So that's all I knew. But I know I heard my dad pissing and moaning about Democrats my whole life. Because, the county where we're from, obviously very conservative. That part of the northeastern California, very conservative. So I didn't really, there wasn't a lot of political discussions, but that was the the underlying conversation everywhere was conservative values. So I didn't really know anything else other than my Bay Area family. Every year they would do a Valentine, like instead of a Christmas card, they do a Valentine card. And I know periodically there was some comments about any conservative president that may have been in the office in those cards. And I know I think I may have heard my dad grumble about it, but I never really, as a teenager, I didn't care. I was like, whatever, Def Leppard, that was my band. They rock. And that was all I cared about, and sports and, girlfriends and cars, the typical things that, high school kids think about. But I know as I got older and went to college, I started hearing more differing opinions, and always dug my heels in emotionally when I would hear things I didn't agree with. And then probably about, I first started my show 4 or 5 years ago, I started bringing on these people that on the surface, completely opposite perspective in terms of political values. And I would have them on and say, why do we get like that? Why do we get, because things this guy would say would just drive me crazy, but I couldn't argue with him because he was so articulate and smart. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to win, because that's when I wanted to win. I'm like, what is it about that? And I think it's values you've held for so long, it becomes part of your identity. And if somebody challenges that, you almost feel like, well, if they're right, then I'm wrong, then I've been duped my whole life. And nobody wants to feel like they've been duped, because like it sort of insults your intelligence that someone pull pulled a fast one on you and misled you. And I think that's where the resistance comes from.
Yeah,
And that's what it
especially
was with me.
especially if you have lived by that thing your entire life and that becomes your identity, man. You don't want somebody to attack that and try to take that away from you because,
Yeah.
like I said,
It's
you're left
personal.
with it's very personal, very personal. But honestly, I feel like, man, most people really don't know who they are at their core. I feel like most people are who people tell them they are. It's just kind of like with kids. I'm implementing certain values, morals, and into my kids that are very Christian and extremely conservative. But at the end of the day, my kids are going to grow up and have their own experiences and become their own people. And I hope that they keep most of those things that I'm teaching them, but that's not necessarily guaranteed or promised. But at the end of the day, for me, I want my kids to be good people at the end of the day. I have people tell me, well, you're raising strong black children. I'm like, I'm just raising good kids, man. Like, I don't care. No, my kids don't have to be strong black children. They just have to be good kids, and good kids grow into good people. And that's what this country needs. I mean, we have enough to divide us here. And then we start focusing on things like skin color. And, that's been one of my biggest issues in my life is like trying to decide for myself, well, am I black or am I just an American? And honestly, it's something I still battle with because it's just I'm constantly being pulled in each direction. But I know who I am.
Almost being, like being told, you're being put into a camp, into a box as well. Because I never thought I'm raising 4 white kids. Never crossed my mind. I'm trying to raise 4 good kids. Top of mind right there, but never about what they look like.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine trying to be a kid nowadays with all the influences from social media. Because I mean, growing up, high school was hard enough, but I just couldn't imagine having the constant access on social media and the bullying aspects that go on. And I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of the issues we're having in the country, especially with, for example, the school shootings, I really feel like a lot of social media has played a part in that, in the fact that we kind of glamorize these people when these incidents happen. And I think people know that they can achieve some quick, cheap fame by doing something crazy on social media. And so I feel like we can't get rid of social media because it's a good avenue. But I also feel like it needs to be some parameters put in place, especially for children.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal tool, and I absolutely love it. Like anything, like TV or radio, it's used for good and evil. And I think what social media has done, it's made people, as much as you can get your voice out there, it's also made people feel invisible. I think, and there's a quote, someone that was on their email just today. It said, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And I totally sympathize with that because, for example, if you go into the DMV or TSA through an airport, they have an uncanny ability to make you feel like you don't even exist. And I would rather have someone screaming at me, hating my guts, than pretend I don't exist. That's the worst, I think. And so I would guess that along with this, some of the mental illness, if someone feels invisible at school or, in life, and they're like, someone's going to notice me. And if this is what it takes, this is what it takes. That's, that's the philosophy, psychology, according to me.
I like it and I agree with it, man. And that's what we used to have that saying on like the football team and in the army and on the PD. If your sergeant's not in your face yelling and screaming at you, that means he don't care about you. You know,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we've gotten to a place where we have a much younger generation, and people feel like people yelling at them and disagreeing with them is attacking them and not growing
Yeah.
them. It's like say somewhere
Yeah.
along the line, America has dropped the ball. Do you feel like where do you think we've dropped the ball in this whole thing in America?
Very generalized, but I think so many of us are so busy as parents trying to survive that by default, things cost so much, taxes are so high, that we're so busy trying to survive that maybe we don't have the time necessary for our kids. So they're almost like raising themselves. And again, I have nothing to back this up, no stats or anything, but just what I've seen, the kind of the disintegration of the family. Parents have their own issues. Parents are trying to do the best they can. And I think as a kid, if the sooner you can realize that your parents are just humans trying to go through this life too, the less expectations you'll have for them. And I mean, even with my dad, he was a single dad for a long, long time. And I think he has like Asperger's. But I thought he was just rude and didn't care about my family or my kids and my siblings' kids. So I was pretty angry with him for many, many years. And then when I realized, I'm like, dad has this, all that anger and hatred just went away because I realized that he was doing the best he could with what he had. And that's all I'm going to get. So my expectations are basically gone for what I'm going to get from my dad. And, I think that's just, the families are struggling.
Yeah, we all really are, man. And so let me ask, what happened with your mother?
I had my dad, my mother developed multiple sclerosis shortly after I was born, and she had it had a severe case, very rare case of it for 10 years. And I actually have no memory of her because shortly after I was born, maybe 1-2 years, she was in a care facility in the Bay Area where she was from. So I have no memory of her. My older sister, she's 5 years older, does. The earliest memory I have was my dad had remarried another woman who had 3 kids, and those are my siblings now, but they were only married for 8 years. Then they divorced. Then she died. Then my poor dad got married again about 6 months before I did to my wife. And then that wife passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease. So my poor dad,
my Lord,
all three of his wives have passed away.
Jeez.
So, but he's done it. He did the best he could with what he had. So I told his current girlfriend, I said, don't marry him because there's a pattern. Just date him.
Man, you know what? Yeah, that's my father-in-law is the same way. So my wife, her mother died of cancer in 2004. Yeah, then he remarried, and his second wife, she passed away from heart failure probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, and he just remarried again. And we love Mama Rebecca, but she has a pacemaker. And I'm like, we need you to hold on. We need you to hold on, okay? We love you. We need you. The babies love you. The grandbabies love you.
Yeah.
And we don't. Yeah. I think we lose sight of that. Like with my father, I have not talked to my father in years because of my mother's suicide, and my father was involved. But I think we lose focus that our parents have struggles, like you said, and I think another thing is, man, we don't show our kids our human side because I guess we feel like it's not our kids' business. But that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, is because I want my kids to see my struggles so they know who I am. I feel like a lot of the older generation, kids don't know who their parents are, and they don't understand why the things are being taught, because I don't know why the older generation made everything so secretive. And maybe that's just an older thing, but
I think they felt it was a weakness, and you don't reveal weakness. My wife is from England, and the British are, very stiff upper lip, and you just keep on keeping on, and you just put your head down, and you don't talk about anything, and you only show emotion to horses and dogs. There's a lot of that. I think a lot of truth that if we do reveal that, then they will see us as weak. But I think I'm going through some struggles with some of my kids right now about how, the frustrations they have with how we raised them, and just trying to help them understand, like, hey, mom and I were doing the best we could back then when you were, our oldest was, she's like, well, that never happened. I'm like, why? Because I didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't have any money, and we were struggling, and I was struggling emotionally with all of my crap and my wife's crap, and you didn't know that. And as a kid, depending on the age, how do you share that with them? I guess there's all sorts of ways. You just tailor your conversation to the age, but just letting them, hey, sometimes mommy and daddy get things wrong and they do the best they can, but yeah, I think we're a lot better. We're a lot more open to, mental illness too, and struggles in life and anxieties and just being as open and as honest with your kids and your friends and family and people. And, that's why, again, part of my show is having people tell their stories, good, bad, and the ugly, because it shows realness that people can connect with. And a lot of these social media influencers look perfect by design, but every house has a story. Everybody's got something in their life, some challenge that we don't know about. I mean, look at how many Hollywood memoirs you have to read before you realize that, hey, everyone's got crap. Sometimes this crap just has more zeros on the end of it.
Exactly. And that clearly tells you that money is not the solver. Plenty of rich people, wealthy, well-to-do people kill themselves. If money was the end all be all, they would never kill themselves. So yet we have this culture where we are chasing after money and just all this cheap stuff, that really doesn't add anything to you. It makes your stay here on earth, your temporary stay here on earth, a little bit more pleasant, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really fill you like it should, man. And that's why I'm glad you have your podcast, and you're getting other people's stories out there, because everybody thinks they're alone in their struggle, but man, it's so crazy how we're at a time where we are so connected, but yet everybody's still so alone.
So disconnected.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing about social
Yeah.
media, is it's so quote unquote social, but we hide behind our microphones and laptops and phones and aren't really connecting with people. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people connect better, and maybe it's a new language kids are learning. I don't know. It just seems like we're not. And that's what I love about the podcasting platform, because it allows people to really get into the weeds and get into a conversation, whereas radio is good, but in TV is a little snippet that's one way. So I'm telling you something, you don't get any say in it. Just the art of conversation is hard. We're so busy, and just sitting on the porch. There's this older guy lives across the street from me, and sometimes I just see him sitting out there on the porch, and he's always talking to me. Always catches me and talks for 20 minutes, and I'm like, dude, I gotta go. I got stuff to do. And then a funny thing is, I asked him, I said, hey, I would love to have you on my podcast. You can talk all about this stuff. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm like, dude, you're always talking to me. Let's get it on, let's record it for your posterity.
Telling you, that microphone changes people, man. When people know they're being recorded, it is a different beast.
Yeah.
People freeze up, man. It's very intimidating. And once it's out there, it's out there.
It's out there. You ain't putting that genie back in the bottle.
You are definitely not, man. You are definitely not. And, and I feel like, man, more people should definitely put it out there. That's why I always encourage people. Like I said, I get tired with everybody. I'm not gonna say having an opinion, but everybody feeling like their opinion is that much more important than anybody else's. But I just feel like it's so important to give some sort of credence to people's experiences and stories, and listen to them, and not necessarily agree, but understand where they're coming from. Because like you said, man, we are all
at the very least.
Yes, at the very least, man. There's a guy here locally that I'll be honest, I cannot stand the guy. He's a protester, and he's a very oddball, because he is the first Black Satanist I've ever met. And I mean, he is complete on the far end of the spectrum of, he's extremely far left, and he's like, man, I shouldn't have to work this hard to just to live, just to exist, And I hear the things he says, and it stirs something up in me and makes me so mad. But it's like, part of me is like, it's so interesting. Like, why do you think this? And how did you become this? How did you become a Black Satanist? And that's a story. I'm trying to work up the courage to reach out to this guy, because he hates the police. Ooh. Yeah, he hates the police.
That sounds like your next show. He's your next guest.
Yeah.
If he's willing to come on and talk about it. Does he hate? I mean, do you know him?
No, I've reached. I do not know him personally, man. I've seen him out. I've seen him out all over the protests, and he's very vocal. But man, let me tell you, this guy is extremely intelligent. The way he communicates in some of his TikTok videos, and I'm like, man, this guy, he knows what he's talking about to a certain degree. His
Yeah,
perspective is just completely different. But the thing is, he's so
that would
dug
be
in.
fun.
That would be fun, and it's not one of those where I'm
And
trying to argue. Just understand.
yeah, and I think that's how you approach it. I'm not trying to win. I call it my, and he listens to my show quite often. I call him, he's my liberal atheist geek counselor. That's what I call him, because he's very articulate and he's very smart. And I've had him on my show 3 times because I know he thinks he sees things in such a different way that at first I might be pissed off, like, come on, Kenny, you always want to win. But I think differently, helps me think differently and at least see things from a different perspective. And I don't want to win. I'm not trying to win. I just want to understand at the very least. I think that's the first step in helping us heal each other and not want to destroy each other with the next stupid politician move or media story.
Yeah, well, we got enough of the politicians, brother. You can tell right now they're posturing for this coming November, man. And that's everything that's going on right now is focused and centered around that. I don't care what it is. That is the focus of everything right now.
And if I remember when there was the quote unquote government shutdowns and people were worried about it. And my perspective was like, will we even notice if the government shuts down? What are they? And maybe I don't know how that works, but like, so what? What if all the politicians went away tomorrow? Would we be okay? I think we would. I think we would be just fine. Americans know how to rally and get things done, and they don't need a politician okaying whatever they're doing or disapproving of what they're doing. I think people could be, and again, maybe that's oversimplifying it, and I'm willing to have my mind changed, or at least opened to why it's so important. But I just don't think it's important anymore.
It's not, man, but it is. Everybody wants somebody to lead them, because I think that comes from a place of laziness personally, to where it's like people don't want to make those hard decisions. People don't want to have those hard conversations. So if you have a figurehead in that position, he does all the thinking and all the stuff for you, and all you have to do is just do your part. And I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of how I am as a police officer. People are like, why aren't you a sergeant yet? Personally, I don't want all the responsibility that comes with watching over 25 to 30 to 40 people. I have my own issues to worry about, so it's easier for me to just stay out here in the streets, make my calls and do this and that, and live my life and work my hours and go home and be done. And so I feel like I said, I can admit that for myself. I feel like that's one of my flaws, where people are like, man, you have all these leadership abilities and you're not using them. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I am not. And sometimes it's hard to break out that shell for yourself.
Yeah, and I get you're in the trenches and you like that. You like talking to the people. Whereas if you were in a supervisorial position, you wouldn't have that contact with the people you're serving. That's a different mindset for sure.
Yeah, Microsoft spreadsheets give me anxiety.
Yeah, when you're babysitting adults.
Exactly. It's a lot easier to babysit adults, man.
Yeah. Well, and then it's just not the time right now. And you're probably comfortable, but there's nothing. I don't think there's anything totally. I know we always say, oh, you don't grow in your comfort zone, and that's true.
Comfort is the enemy.
It can be, but if you love what you're doing, then what's wrong with that?
Exactly.
What's wrong with being comfortable doing that? If it's working.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep. Well, my thing is I've struggled enough in my life, so it's like I'm happy to be at a point where I'm comfortable, because I feel like I've spent the last 38 years of my life struggling, and I'm just like, man, it's good to be at a point where I can feel like I can take a break and just kind of rest for a minute before I start on the next venture. And that's my biggest
reset
problem.
a little. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's okay. And it works for you, so don't fight it.
Now, so let me ask you, do you have any other plans outside of your podcast? Like, what's next for you on the horizon?
Well, the whole public speaking thing, and I know you were talking about that on your latest episode that I'm still listening to. Part of me would like to be a public speaker, but again, does the world need another public speaker or another freaking author? I don't know, but that's something that makes me nervous. I've got one of my friends, neighbor, who did a TED Talk, and I think that would be fun to do a TED Talk because I can get up and ramble in front of people, but to have something really prepared where there's no interaction back and forth, where it's just you talking, that's a challenge. So I think that's something I'd like to do. And I don't know what the plans for my show right now. It's a hobby. I love it. It's slowly growing. I'm into it 4.5 years now. I don't really know what I want to do with it, other than just allow people to share their stories and have a platform. Would I like it to grow more? Absolutely. But it's growing. I'm not in a position to devote more time to it than I am right now because I have family and bills and responsibilities and all that. And I like doing the real estate world that I'm doing. That works really well for me. So big plans. Yeah. Don't have a lot of, I don't have a bucket. I need a bucket to put my lists in. Don't have a bucket.
Biting the elephant, eating the elephant one bite at a time, brother. I feel you. I'm right there with you, man.
I don't even know if I don't even know if the elephant's there. I don't really. But yeah, I don't have, setting goals is still a new thing, new concept for me. I've never really done that until 4 years ago, and like writing them down, and part of me is still scared of that, honestly, of writing a goal down, because I don't want to fail at it. So if you don't write it down, how can you fail at something that's not there?
Oh, that's deep. I like that. Never thought about it like that.
Yeah. Was that poetry? That might have been poetry.
That was. Oh, you traitor.
Oh, dang. Traitor to my own philosophies.
You hypocrite.
I know.
Man, so man, who up to date? So you are what, 4 years in, 100 episodes. Who has been your favorite guest thus far? Don't say me. Don't you dare say me.
You're my least favorite right now.
Oh,
no, it's all good. You're my third favorite. Probably. That is so hard. Yeah, I had my sister on. She's been destroying herself with food for most of her life. She's 58. And I'm like, what's going on with you? Why are you doing this? Because up until the time she got married, she was thin and fit. And then shortly after she got married and had her first kid, she just was abusing herself, just morbidly obese. I'm like, what's going on with you? What's going on? And she kept just saying nothing and got pissed at me. And I said, look, I'm going to keep nagging at you because I know there's something there. So whenever you're ready. And she finally did tell me she was sexually abused when she was 6 and 7 years old by like a 14-year-old cousin. And so she had been harboring this for 40 years and didn't tell a soul, not even her husband. Didn't even know. And so I said, hey, would you share that story? Thinking that she's just going to tell me to piss off and go die in a hole. But she said, yeah, I'll tell that story. And the healing that has brought her has been, I mean, my show was just part of it, but to unload that to the world and get that off her chest was an absolute miracle. And I think maybe another one that was quite impressive to me was a young man who I went to church with. He was 15 at the time that I moved into this area. And he had this attitude of just, F you, I dare you to try to love me or teach me, whatever. He was just kind of a prick. And he got involved in heroin. And a really smart kid, got involved in heroin. But he was so arrogant that he thought we're just going to sample this for research purposes. And ended up getting addicted, started robbing banks, ended up going to county jail, then to Utah State Prison. And then when he was out, and he's probably 35 now, probably 30, he's pushing 35 now. When he got out, he was doing really well. And I said, Marshall, man, you got to tell your story. This is fascinating. It ended up being like a 3-hour, 3-part interview while he was out. And it took me about 3 months to get it from him. And just that story of how he, went from this decent young man, church going kid, to robbing banks to satisfy his fix. And shortly after I did all the third interview with him, he violated his parole and robbed another freaking bank. And now he's on federal prison for another 5 to 15. But that's the only one that anyone ever responded to. And they left a voicemail and they said, you take that down because he is a liar and he held my girlfriend at gunpoint and blah, blah, just, another side of the story. It's the only real feedback I've ever got on anything. But those are probably some of the two of the, ones that really impacted me the most.
It's weird how, I don't get a lot of feedback on my podcast, but then I realize not a lot of people that have podcasts do. And I'll be honest, because I don't give people a lot of feedback on podcasts I listen to, because it's like, hey, go comment, leave a like. And it's just like, I get my fix and what I need to hear and I just keep moving, so it's like, I understand why people don't do it, so it's one of those things,
takes
man.
Time.
It does take time, but it's like, how much time does it really take? It only takes maybe a minute
to leave a review.
Yeah. Only time I've left reviews have been when I went to a restaurant and it was, the absolute worst service I ever had. It was in Arizona at this place that called it a barbecue restaurant. I saw them take the meat from the freezer and they put it on a flat iron grill, warmed it up and threw barbecue sauce on it. The food was atrocious. And I just remember angry texting on my phone, just tearing this place apart. And I was looking at all these other reviews of how good it was, and I just tore this place limb from limb. The place is still there, and people don't care.
Yeah.
It's
well, and that's funny. Usually negative reviews are the ones that people are like, they're fired up and passionate about it. They're going to give them. At the end of my show, I say, if you love or hate what you hear, leave a review at this address. I haven't got any that way, but I get feedback on when I post it on social. So I hope it's, my goal is that I hope it influences somebody for good, that makes them think, makes me, if nothing else, it makes me think differently and helps me grow. And one of my things I want to do is I want to interview people who I know we don't agree. Because, like I would love to interview Nicole Hannah Jones about the 1690 project. That would be fun, just to get her, because I, on the surface or even deeper, we're like, we don't really agree, but getting the why behind it, I think that shows people, going back to basic Christianity, love your neighbor. That's my motto. And by asking someone, tell me about your experience with this. Tell me why this is so important to you, or why this means to you. Why do you believe this? Why do you think? Why do you love the Supreme Court decision? Why do you hate the Supreme Court decision? Just tell me why. I don't want to argue. I just want to know why. Opens doors and softens hearts.
Yeah, it really does, And so let me ask, how did you change from being very staunch conservative to where you are now, where you're just kind of in the middle, just wanting to understand and hear more?
I got tired of hearing myself bitch and moan about things. I was a conservative talk show junkie for 20 years. All I listened to was talk radio, Sean Hannity, the Glenn Becks, the Rush Limbaugh, you fill in the blank, all of them. Listen to all of them. And while I think, on this, in terms of policy, I agreed with them, I got so tired of the arguing. They would always just argue and name call. And I felt like I was supporting that and I was a part of it. And I'm like, it's got to be a better way. I think we can, and instead of reacting, I just would think about if someone was attacking me for something, someone on the left, I would just think about it instead of reacting. I'm like, well, maybe there's some truth to what they say. Maybe there's some merit in their ideas. And realize that we can talk about the ideas, and I don't have to attack the person personally or name call or say you're an F and FY this, XYZ this. and I wanted to kind of be a part of a solution instead of continuing the same old crap. I mean, I'm in a very conservative state and work with a lot of conservative people who are very, very anti-Biden and voice it all the time. In fact, when the gas prices started to go up, there was all these stickers that, I know you've probably seen them, that
I did
said,
that.
Yeah, I did that. I did that. And one of the guys was like, hey, you're going on a road trip. You gotta put these stickers everywhere. And I said, okay, that's funny. I'll do it. And it's funny. Haha.
Yeah.
But I went to one gas pump and there was already 2 stickers there. And I'm like, oh, someone's beat me. But I'm thinking, did he really do that? And am I perpetuating something that may or may not be true? I don't know. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of the problem. And I feel like I'm part of the problem if I'm just bitching and moaning and blaming everything on Biden. You can't blame everything on Biden, and you can't blame everything on Trump. You can't blame things on whoever's in the White House, because I don't think they honestly have that much power.
No.
And I don't want to blame. I don't want to be in the blame game.
Yeah, man. At the end of the day, like I teach my kids, the 3 Ps, there's not a president, a politician, or policy that somebody can enact that is going to make your life better or worse. At the end of the day, it is all on you. The only thing you control is how you respond and how you react. Literally, that's it, man. Literally. If they hike up taxes, which sucks, nobody likes, guess what? You're going to have to cut back on your lifestyle. You got all those apps you don't use, all those video apps. No, maybe you should cut some of those, man. And it sucks, but that's just the truth of the matter. And like I said, we don't control any of the stuff going on. Like I say, I bitch and moan about a lot of stuff going on. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm doing? I'm getting up, putting on my work boots and going to work and doing what I got to do to take care of my family. You know, it's so easy to be the victim. And like I said, we have literally become a nation of victims, which is completely opposite of what we as Americans have been. You know, we've always been victors. You know, we've always been able to overcome. But now it's like we've completely stopped and just turned 180 and just gone the opposite direction. And we're just looking for somebody to blame but ourselves.
How dare you be an advocate for personal responsibility? You're screwing up the whole system.
I know, man. I know. You know what? It's so weird. So I was at my buddy's cigar shop when I was working the other night. Fadi, I love my guy Fadi. Shout out to Fadi. He's from Jordan, came to America, didn't speak a lick of English, and he's become very successful. So I was talking to this young black girl in the shop, and I was just listening to her, and she was like, I'm going to be an advocate for black people, and I'm gonna make things right and better for my people. And I asked her, I was like, so we know that there's a problem within the African American community with violence, and there's cultural issues, and there's a lack of fathers in the black homes. And I asked her, I was like, how do we change that? And everything she kept going back to was white supremacy, this, that. And I'm like, I understand that stuff has played a role. I was like, but on a lower level, how do we change the family and the home? And she's like, well, that means you don't understand white supremacy in this country. And it was never a look at myself or look at the people around me in my community. It was always pointing the finger. And I just kind of got tired of the conversation because I was like, we're just gonna blame it all on the white man. At the end of the day, I'm like, there's only so much blame the white man can take at a certain point. Michael Jackson, man, is the man in the mirror.
Yeah. And it is. You having someone, or you're holding someone personally, accountable, personal accountability, responsibility, that pisses people off.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
That's hard, because they have to look inward. We have to look inward and like, well, yeah, maybe I am a douchebag, and maybe I need to change some things in my own life and decisions I make. And that's much harder than going, yeah, that bastard across the street did it. It's him. I'm just reacting, right? Where's my brothers and sisters?
Yeah, man. Yeah, and there's all the man's got his foot on my neck. And for black people, unfortunately, our history in this country, which has not been very great, and there's still a lot of issues that permeated from slavery and Jim Crow, which wasn't all that long ago. It's so easy for us to play the victim because we have that baggage that's been carried with us since America started, and it's so hard to break away from that because a lot of that is part of our culture, the distrust.
Well,
and it's
well, you told me when I interviewed you last time, you talked about you pulled over a car full of young black men, and you mentioned something about you got a grandma that's 80 years old that's been teaching fear of the police for because she grew up in the 20s or 30s when that was a problem. So maybe elaborate on that, what you meant by that.
Generational trauma. It
Yes.
literally
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
passed down. Yeah, like my grandma, born in Mississippi in 1920. Of course, she didn't like black people, or excuse me, of course, she didn't like white people. And you know what she's going to teach my mother and her kids? Don't trust white people. And they're going to teach them, don't trust white people. And that just keeps getting
Yeah.
put down. And that in turn puts into, well, you can't trust the police. Look what they've done to us all this time. And I can't argue that. But at the same
Yeah.
time,
There's truth.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's why I believe in Christianity and love Christianity, because with Christianity, at a certain point, you have to learn to forgive. And one of my favorite verses is, the Lord will not forgive you until you forgive others. And I've tried that with some people that I know that are Christian and very, very pro black. And I ask them, at what point does forgiveness come in? And they always turn it back with, well, when they stop doing the things they're doing to us. And so it's just this constant loop of, they did me wrong, I'm not going to forgive them, and I'm just waiting for them to stop doing wrong. And it's just like, insanity is doing the same thing, except expecting a different result.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are just continuing to do the same thing. And that's when I realized I had to break away and find my own path. And I've never been happier. Learning to forgive those that hurt me, because
Yeah.
harboring all that negative energy and emotion did nothing for anybody. And it only hurt you further.
Yeah. No, it's like swallowing poison and hoping your enemy dies. There's forgiveness is like, well, they need to get what's coming to them. And forgiveness doesn't do that. Like, yeah, you're right. What's coming to them is not up to you. That's up to God and nature or universe or whoever, mother, whatever. It's not up to you to do that. And forgiveness is hard. It's hard as hell.
The hardest thing
but
to
it works.
ever do.
But it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it does.
I had a roommate years ago that stole some money from me, and I was so angry at this person for so long. And I think I'd read a book. There was a book called The Miracle of Forgiveness. So I read it and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try this. Just test this out. And I said, hey, you stole that money from me. But I'm done. Consider it a gift. And it was almost like instantaneous. I just felt free. And I haven't forgot it, obviously, because I'm still talking about it, but I don't harbor any anger towards that person for doing that. That was the first time I'd had an experience with trying to do that. But it works. And it's just such a better way, because you can't grow when you're pissed off and wallowing in misery and sorrow. You're stagnant. That's damnation, where you're not progressing. But
and I feel like that's where we are at the country. We're so focused on, I guess, what has been done in the past, and we just can't let go of it. We just keep digging up these old skeletons and old bones. We're looking at what it was, but not what it is, man. And it's just like, I'm a black man in America, and I live a wonderful life. I live a great life, but I understand that not every black person in America is living my life currently. But I believe anybody can live the life I'm living, because I am not exceptional in any way. I am painfully average, of average intelligence. Sometimes some people would say below, especially my wife. She's probably right.
Yeah.
But it's just letting go of that past, man, and just dragging this baggage and all these chains with you just wears you down. And that's what I'm trying to teach my kids. And that's what I try to teach a lot of people I interact with as an officer. It's just like somebody will say, man, I hate y'all cops. I hate y'all what y'all did to me. I was like, hey, it wasn't me. It wasn't me, man. It's like, me and you are starting fresh. He's like, I know it wasn't you, but you in the uniform. I was like, hey, whatever they did, that's between you and them. But me and you make a fresh start. And so I feel like with your podcast and mine, like, we're trying to get people to have a fresh start. And it's so hard to do. And I tell people, not everybody has to be a Christian, but a lot of the values and morals that you get from religion and Christianity, a lot of those could go such a long and far way with helping making the world and just our communities and our families a better place, man.
Yeah, just basic kindness. And that's, I've been beating this drum for so long that I'm almost tired of hearing myself say it, but I think that's the way. And do I suck at it sometimes? Yeah, I'm sure I do. I'm sure I don't handle things as well as I could, but at least I'm trying to do right by that philosophy every day in loving your neighbor, and your neighbor is everybody, everyone around you. Not some, Jesus didn't say save them, fix them, convert them, change their mind, punch them, put them on a personal service project list. He said, love them. And I don't think it gets any more complicated than that. Man, not easy, but it's not complicated either.
No, but we make it complicated, because of pride and ego. It always gets in the way, man. But man, this has been phenomenal, man. This has been awesome. This is feel so energized after this one talking to you, brother. It's good to have you on. So before we get ready to hang this up, where can people find you, and how can people support your podcast and tune in and listen?
It's just the Parrish the Thought podcast is the name of it, and I'm on all social media. I think Instagram it's Parrish Podcast, and then just through Facebook and all the other blah blah blah, and just share it. If it moves, I always tell people, if it moves you, if it does anything for you, then share it with someone else, and see if we can make the world less crappy than it was yesterday.
All right, man. How did you come up with that name? I was telling my buddy about it. He was like, man, that's very catchy.
Well,
love that podcast.
Phrase, I've heard that phrase, Parrish the Thought. I've heard that my whole life. Like, Parrish, how dare you think that? And I'm like, well, that makes sense. It's my name, so why not roll with it? I may have to do like a tagline or a subheading, and I think I was writing it down. Oh, real conversations with the less than famous. That's what I want. That's
I like it. I like it though.
I'd never really thought about having a tagline until today. And so just it's a goofy little phrase that works with my name. So,
but it's awesome, man.
Because
it's awesome because honestly, dude, like being a podcaster and an author, it's humbling because somebody told me, I reached out to somebody for like an agent, like, you didn't kill Bin Laden. You're a guy with a great story, but honestly, nobody cares. And I was like, well, damn, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But
tell me how you really feel.
Yeah. But honestly, that's how it really works. Like, nobody knows who you are. So people are like, okay, why should I listen to you? And that's just one of those things where it's like, man, but with your show, everybody has a story. And interviews with the less than famous, man, I like it.
And why shouldn't someone listen to your story? And because we all want to change the world, and I may have mentioned this before, in this big grand way. Well, go change the world. I'm like, okay, what does that look like? I have to become president? No. You can change the world by being kinder to your neighbor that you have been fighting with for years. That's where you start. And that's attainable and easy to do for people. And they don't have to feel like, because they figure, oh, unless I can do it on this grand scale where millions are affected, I don't want to do it. Well, maybe you'll be hundreds that are affected. If you think about it, like I look at, on average, my podcast gets, I don't know, maybe 100 listens per episode. And you think, well, that's crap. What are these people that get these bazillion downloads? But you think about, and just imagine yourself in a hotel ballroom and there's 100 people in there. That's a lot of people.
That is. You don't think about it like that, though.
No. You think, oh, I want that million listeners and million downloads and blah, blah, blah. That's not what it's about. That's great. If that happens, I'll be grateful for it and figure out how to manage that level of attention. But right now, people listen, and I've had some high school friends that said, hey, thanks so much for your show. I listen to it all the time and I appreciate your perspective, and the world needs to hear more of it. And that meant the world to me. And that was one person that I haven't even spoken to in 30 years. So
it's powerful, man.
Keep doing it. Keep doing your thing. I love what you're doing. Love your perspectives, and I like hearing your perspectives because cops have a bad rap right now. And I was just in England, and I accosted a couple biker cops.
I saw the picture you sent me.
Yeah. And I said, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of British cops for so long. And I said, would you guys be willing to come on my show? And of course, the bureaucracies are ridiculous. And they said, well, we'll talk to our superiors. And we get asked a lot. And because I want to do a comparison, because I know that the media portrays cops as just bloodthirsty killers they're out shooting people for fun, and they use guns too quickly. Whereas in Britain, I think they're just now allowed to carry weapons, and maybe the last few years that cops
Yeah, they
carry
have
guns.
certain specialized officers and units that have them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I want to know, okay, well, here's a situation. How would you handle that? And just compare, just to understand. But, everyone's got their stupid bureaucracy and regulations, afraid to get sued. And so they haven't responded yet. We'll see.
I hope so. I'll be looking forward to that one, my man. I really am.
Fun.
Well, man, like I said, you have my complete love and my support, brother. Just like I told Tina, she's my favorite white lady. You're my third favorite white guy. Got two ahead of you.
My third favorite white guy. Okay,
you're working your way to the top.
Well, everyone needs a good favorite white guy, and I'll work my way up to the top somehow.
Did you wear any cross colors for Juneteenth?
Any what colors?
Cross colors, the African cross colors.
Okay, I have to make a confession. I don't think I even knew what Juneteenth was, even like in the last 6 months. I didn't know what it was. So how did I miss Juneteenth?
Most people don't, man. Don't feel bad. Trust me. I've known it my whole life, but nobody's ever really celebrated. It's literally been mostly a
When did it become a national holiday? Was it this year? Is that why I heard about it?
Last year. Because
last year.
Yeah, last year.
Okay,
because Biden and the Democrats used it as a political ploy for, it's political, man. But like I said, strip away the politics from it. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I, like when you say cross colors, I did nothing because I didn't really know. Just admit my ignorance. I didn't know.
Brother, most black people don't even know. So don't feel bad. Well, let's be honest. Most Americans don't know our history here in general.
Well, I what a good guest would be for you. I'll send you his stuff. Is Jonathan Dunn. He's an Irishman who has been preaching about America and how amazing America is for years. 15. He's been trying to get to America for 15 years. He finally made it. He came and did a speaking tour last year, and he ended up getting married to a woman he's been courting for a long time. He now lives in Oklahoma, but he has such a phenomenal perspective of America and why America is great. I'm going to connect you with him. I think he'd be.
I'm down for that, my brother.
Come on, he's. I am embarrassed about how little of America's history I know, and this guy is not even from here, and he eats, drinks, and breathes it. About why America. He says America is great because Americans are good, and goes, our principles are greater than our problems, and he's amazing.
It is, man. If you're born into money, you're born rich. That's all you know. You take it for granted.
Yeah,
that's most of us here, man.
If we've never left or visited anywhere else, there's no way to compare. There's no perspective on it.
Exactly.
Our freedoms, being able to talk, you and I being able to talk like this, and not get. Have someone knocking on a door and getting whisked away and never seen again, where some countries that is the case.
Yep.
Seems like a movie, but it's a reality.
It's definitely a reality in a lot of places in the world, man. That's why I will always say I love America and I love my fellow Americans, just like you, brother.
Yeah.
Man, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for your time, man.
Hey, you are so welcome, man. It has been an honor and a pleasure. I appreciate it and love to do it again. And let me know how I can help you with your book or whatever you're doing. I'd love to help you.
Man, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you, brother. You take it easy.
All right, man.
All right. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you again for listening to the Parrish the Thought Show. We would love your comments and feedback on our website at briankeithparrish.com/feedback. If you love or hate what you hear, please give us a rating on whatever platform you find us. Hey, thanks again for listening to the show. I am so grateful you're here and continue to support my efforts. We're doing something a little new. It's called Ask Brian Anything. If you have questions, comments, concerns about any previous episode, or just want to know my perspective on anything, please send those to parrishpodcast@gmail.com. That's PARRISH podcast@gmail.com, and I'll feature them on an upcoming episode. You're still here? Click on the next episode for more from the Parrish the Thought Show.